Have you ever heard of a Cold War where certain people engage in relentless verbal battles, leaving no room for compromise in a debate? If you browse the internet, all you will find is a war of words between South Africa and Rwanda, which many fear could escalate from mere rhetoric to actual conflict. No one ever imagined that Rwanda and South Africa could reach a point where one openly confronts the other, to the extent of tensions rising to near conflict levels. Even so-called political analysts with deep geopolitical knowledge never considered the possibility that two countries separated by a distance of 4,465 kilometers could engage in such a heated exchange of words. Rwanda is a country made up of many hills and high mountains, earning it the name the Land of 1,000 Hills. It has numerous lakes, especially Lake Kivu, and its climate is moderately warm due to its high altitude. South Africa, on the other hand, has a vastly different geographical landscape. It features coastal plains along the Indian and Atlantic Oceans, highlands, mountains, and even deserts like the Karoo. Its climate varies depending on the region, with some areas experiencing extreme heat while others are extremely cold. Rwanda covers an area of 26,338 square kilometers, making it one of Africa's smallest countries, ranking 4th smallest among the 54 nations on the continent. In contrast, South Africa spans 1,221,037 square kilometers, making it 46 times larger than Rwanda. This places South Africa as the 9th largest country in Africa. Rwanda has a population of about 14.3 million people, while South Africa has over 60.6 million inhabitants, meaning South Africa's population is more than 4 times that of Rwanda. Debates have escalated online between the two countries, with military posturing and displays of strength reaching an unprecedented level. What began as a diplomatic standoff over the issue of Eastern Congo has turned into a military showdown that could spiral into a full-scale war. South Africa was the first to provoke Rwanda, accusing it of being responsible for the deaths of its 14 soldiers in the DRC. Rwanda, which has a doctrine of striking first rather than being struck in a Cold War scenario, responded by stating that if South Africa wanted war, Rwanda was ready to face it with overwhelming force. South Africa sided with Congo, claiming that the M23 rebels were Rwandans looting Congo's resources. Now imagine how Paul Kagame responded to that.
And South Africa dares even issue threats about what is likely to happen after that, and so on and so forth. Of course, we will see what threats they are talking about.
Let's take this to the battlefield of open war. If this conflict were to escalate into a direct war immediately, who would win? Numbers don't lie, whether it's troop count, weaponry, or the size of a country, but none of those alone determine victory in war. Allow me today to make a direct comparison between the Rwandan military and the South African military. Let's see who would militarily crush the other to the point of total exhaustion. I will rely on numbers and expert political analysis. We will also examine the moment South Africa made the decision to openly challenge Rwanda, issuing a warning right from the start. Welcome to the world of research. Welcome to the large family of WIN, Wisdom in Narrations. The South African military ranks 40th among the 145 militaries in the world. In Africa, the SANDF ranks 4th among the 38 strongest militaries on the continent. What is surprising here is that Rwanda keeps its military information highly classified to the extent that the RDF does not appear on any ranking, neither globally nor in Africa. What is amusing is that the FRDC, the military of the Democratic Republic of Congo, ranks 8th, but has failed to contain the M23 rebels, who are alleged to be supported by the Rwandan military. This is where Rwanda's military makes the world question how. In the ongoing war in Congo, where the M23 is fighting against the National Army, the FRDC, which is supported by South Africa's SANDF, Malawi's military, the UN peacekeeping force MONUSCO, Burundi's military and mercenaries, it is reported that all of them have been defeated by the M23, which is said to be backed by Rwanda's RDF. So, If Rwanda's military is supporting the M23 rebels and they have managed to defeat a country ranked 8th in Africa, allied with the 4th ranked military and 2 other nations, what rank would you give Rwanda? You tell me. Let's start with something astonishing, something that might even scare you. The Rwandan Defense Force, RDF, has a military budget of $178 million. When converted into Kigali's local currency, that amounts to 256 billion Rwandan francs. In contrast, the South African National Defense Force, SANDF, operates with a budget of approximately $3 billion, 16 times more than Rwanda's military budget. According to data from the UK-based International Institute for Strategic Studies, IISS, the numbers are as follows. South Africa has between 75,000 and 80,000 active duty soldiers, with an additional 28,000 reservists. Rwanda, on the other hand, has 45,000 active duty soldiers and approximately 5,000 reservists. For internal security forces, Rwanda has 2,500 personnel dedicated to internal security, while South Africa has 12,000 personnel for the same purpose. South Africa's military is divided into different branches. One of them is the South African Navy, SAN, which has over 6,000 personnel specialized in naval warfare, as South Africa has a coastline. The SAN possesses 3 submarines, 4 frigates, 33 patrol vessels, 2 mine warfare vessels, and other 7 unspecified. Rwanda's military, however, has only a small marine unit operating on Lake Kivu. Since Rwanda is a landlocked country, it does not have a full-fledged navy. The exact number of personnel and equipment stationed in Kivu is unknown. A naval battle between these 2 countries would be highly unlikely, as South Africa would have to fight alongside the DRC in Lake Kivu. Transporting ocean-based military equipment into a lake would be a logistical nightmare, making a naval conflict practically impossible. Wars are not won by sheer numbers of soldiers or weapons alone. History has shown that a smaller, well-trained force can outperform a larger, poorly organized one. The South African National Defense Force, SANDF, is led by General Rudzani Mafwanya, who took command under President Cyril Ramaphosa on June 1, 2021. Rwanda's military, on the other hand, is led by General Mubarak Muganga, who was appointed by President Paul Kagame on June 5, 2023. The South African Air Force, SAAF, is one of the strongest air forces on the continent. It has 26 Saab JAS 39 Gripen fighter jets, 11 Denel Royvalk attack helicopters, and several transport planes for moving troops and military supplies quickly. In comparison, Rwanda's Air Force operates a fleet that includes Cessna 208 Caravan from USA, Diamond DA-42 from Austria, MiL-Mi-17 and MiL-Mi-24 helicopters created by Russia, Bayraktar TB2 drones made by Turkey, and other transport helicopters for personnel and equipment. Additionally, Rwanda has recently acquired new combat aircraft from Turkey, though details remain undisclosed. Rwanda is one of the African nations heavily investing in drone warfare, using drones not only for military purposes but also for medical supply deliveries in rural areas. Modern warfare is increasingly reliant on drones. Rwanda is at the forefront of this technology and is even constructing a drone operations center, DOSI, which will also serve as a drone manufacturing hub, one of the largest in Africa. This raises a critical point. Controlling airspace is key to modern warfare. South Africa would face significant challenges in an aerial conflict, as Rwanda has already demonstrated its deadly ability to disrupt enemy radar systems. According to UN soldiers in DR Congo and UN warfare experts, Rwanda was reportedly behind radar jamming when M23 rebels captured Goma's airport, causing severe disruptions to aerial surveillance in the region. Let's get on the ground. South Africa possesses more advanced military equipment than Rwanda, including powerful war vehicles, tanks, and heavy weaponry. Their forces have 195 Oliphant MBTs, main battle tanks, 240 Ricat combat vehicles, over 1,000 Ratel armored personnel carriers, 134 heavy artillery guns, towed artillery, and 49 self-propelled artillery guns that fire without a human operator. The SANDF currently possesses 252 combat tanks, 18,692 armored fighting vehicles, and 101 rocket projectors. They also have a strong air defense system, including Omkhonto missiles capable of shooting down aircraft, 2 fighter aircraft, 12 transport aircraft, 81 trainer aircraft, and 97 total helicopters, of which 10 are attack helicopters. Yesterday, someone whispered to me, "How can 2 non-bordering countries go to war?" I too wondered how South Africa's massive tanks would even reach Rwanda. Consider this, the travel time between South Africa and Rwanda varies depending on the route. The distance from Johannesburg to Kigali is 2,500 kilometers by air, taking 4 to 5 hours. By road, the journey takes 7 to 10 days. The overland route would pass through Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Tanzania, and then into Rwanda, covering 3,500 to 4,000 kilometers. Now, another question. President Paul Kagame once said that no one would fight on Rwandan soil. Any aggressor would be confronted at their own base. So, where would Cyril Ramaphosa's heavy weapons be stationed? Would he fire into Rwanda from his home? Would he base them in Tanzania, Burundi, Uganda, or the DRC? Placing them in Tanzania, Uganda, or Burundi is unrealistic, as these countries would avoid being drawn into war. No nation wants to invite open conflict in broad daylight. That leaves Congo, especially since South African soldiers reportedly killed by RDF-labeled rebels lost their lives there. But hold on, if someone attacks you once, they will try again. And with M23 intensifying operations in the DRC, how would South African forces even get through? If South African weapons were to be stationed in Congo, Rwanda's intelligence agencies, NISS, National Intelligence and Security Service, and DMI, Directors of Military Intelligence, would detect them early. This is their job. At that point, the claim that Rwanda attacks but is never attacked would hold. This implying that any weapons found would be dealt with before they could be used, just as Israel preemptively destroyed Egypt's weapons in the Six-Day War. If this happens, Tshisekedi's government, which hosts these weapons, would face serious consequences. Now, listen carefully. Do you know the tactics used in the Rwandan Liberation War? What does this have to do with today? Let's assume SANDF, South African National Defense Force, miraculously reaches Rwanda, even if it takes them a century. Would they be ready to fight in the land of 1,000 hills? Remember October 1st, the day the Rwandan Patriotic Army, RPA, launched the war for Rwanda's liberation, led by Major General Fred Gisa Ruwigema. The first battle was fought on the Rwanda-Uganda border in Nyagatare district. The area is flat terrain, similar to South Africa. That strategy failed because Major General Fred was killed early on, forcing his troops to retreat. Then, President Paul Kagame took over. He shifted tactics, moving the war into the northern mountains areas, where victory was more achievable. The terrain favored soldiers familiar with mountain and jungle warfare like those trained in Uganda. For SANDF, Rwanda's hills would be a death trap. They have no experience in mountain warfare. They would face relentless guerrilla attacks, hit-and-run strikes in the forests and hills where their heavy tanks would be useless. This is where they would meet their downfall. The Rwanda Defense Force, RDF, uses a digital camouflage pattern that blends various shades of green, brown, including tan, and black. This design is intended to provide effective concealment in Rwanda as mountainous and forested terrain country. This camouflage helps soldiers remain concealed in hills, forests, and rough terrain, making it difficult for enemies to spot them, allowing for surprise attacks. In contrast, the South African National Defense Force, SANDF, uses the Soldier 2000 camouflage pattern consisting of 3 colors, brown, green, and tan. These colors match South Africa's open terrain, plains, and clear skies, making soldiers harder to detect in such environments. However, this pattern is less effective in densely forested or mountainous countries. Rwanda, comparatively, does not have a large arsenal of heavy weaponry. It relies on a legacy of Soviet-era tanks and light armored vehicles. The country possesses around 50 main battle tanks, including T-55 and T-72 models, as well as approximately 200 light armored vehicles. The RDF also operates D-30 122mm howitzers, one of the largest artillery pieces produced by Russia, along with multiple rocket launchers, MRLs, like the BM-21 Grad, capable of launching multiple rockets simultaneously. Additionally, the RDF employs 120mm and 81mm mortars in its military operations. Rwanda's military has surface-to-air missiles, SAMs, but their exact numbers are not publicly disclosed. These include man-portable air defense systems, MANPADS, such as the IGLA-S, SA-24, and FN-6, which individual soldiers can use to target low and medium-altitude aircraft. The RDF also operates short-range air defense, SHORAD, systems like the ZU-23-2 anti-aircraft guns and small missiles for base defense. Rwanda also has radar and air defense coordination systems, allowing it to track aircraft and impose aerial threats within its airspace. The RDF possesses anti-tank guided missiles, ATGMs, including the Russian-made 9K-111 Faggot, effective against tanks at a range of 2.5 kilometers, and the 9K-115-2 Metis M, a compact but powerful anti-tank missile. The Cornet E 9M133 Cornet, reportedly in RDF's arsenal, has a range of 5.5 kilometers. Additionally, the RDF uses RPG-7 and RPG-29 rocket-propelled grenades, RPGs, which are man-portable and used for engaging armored vehicles. The RDF consists of 4 branches: Rwanda Air Force, responsible for aerial operations; Rwanda Land Forces, responsible for ground security, counterinsurgency, and counter-terrorism; Reserve Force, composed of veteran soldiers; Medical Health Service, responsible for healthcare operations within the military. Similarly, the South African National Defence Force, SANDF, consists of 5 branches: South African Army, responsible for land warfare; South African Air Force, SAAF, responsible for aerial operations; South African Navy, responsible for maritime operations; South African Military Health Service, responsible for medical support in combat and humanitarian missions; Reserve Forces, composed of civilian soldiers who can be deployed when needed. However, Rwanda's military stands out significantly. RDF soldiers are highly disciplined, extensively trained, and experienced in real warfare. Unlike large militaries that rely heavily on armored units, RDF focuses on strategic and unconventional tactics. In combat, RDF employs hit-and-run attacks, intelligence-led strikes, and guerrilla warfare, executing ambushes and precision strikes before the enemy can react. These tactics have been honed over years of combat experience, and in contrast, South Africa's military has more experience in peacekeeping missions. However, Rwanda has extensive experience in actual warfare. The RDF has engaged in counterinsurgency operations across Africa, including major missions in Mozambique and the Central African Republic. A South African opposed to President Cyril Ramaphosa's government said,
"It would have been worse because there is no necessary equipment in our base. They are just called soldiers for the sake of being called soldiers." But
that was Julius Malema, who vowed never to hold back in front of South African leaders. South Africa, despite its reputation, has not fought a war in many years. This gives Rwanda an advantage in combat experience, while South Africa possesses a vast arsenal of advanced weaponry. If South Africa were to attack Rwanda, its forces would first have to endure the harsh terrain of mountains and dense forests. Launching an assault on Rwanda would require planning across more than 3,000 kilometers, with no easy supply routes to sustain a war effort. Fighting a war far from home is not just a financial burden, it is a logistical nightmare. This works in Rwanda's favor, as it has vowed never to wage war on its own soil. However, wars are not won by weapons alone. They are won by military strategy, political alliances, and international agreements. South Africa has many international allies and is a key member of BRICS, alongside Russia and China. This means it could access modern weaponry and global support. However, Rwanda also has strong ties with Western powers, including their dominant force, the United States. This could turn into a broader conflict, pitting the US and its European allies against Russia and China, backing their partner, South Africa. No one can predict war with certainty. Victory requires determination and persistence until the enemy surrenders. A war's outcome is not determined by the size of an army or the number of heroes. It is a battle of intelligence, tactics, and resilience. One undeniable fact is that Rwanda is known for using a small but highly effective military force. So, will Cyril Ramaphosa wage war on Rwanda, or will this remain a battle of words? If you followed this to the end, how would you assess this conflict? Let's discuss in the comments. Thanks for watching. I wish you better life, foods, and money. Stay in the Big Wins family.